Welcome to New Breakpoint, Microsoft's digital event series designed for developers by developers. I'm your host, Michelle Sanford, the Developer Engagement Lead for Australia, New Zealand and Asia. We broadcast on the second Thursday of every month, and if you join us on the day, my guests and I will answer your questions live in chat. As you might know, New Breakpoint has expanded to encompass Asia Pacific, meaning we now bring interviews with developer experts from all over Asia. However, today is a bit of a treat because we are welcoming Stacy Cashmore from Omniplan. Stacy is a Microsoft MVP, and we recently got to catch up in Sweden for the ORDEV Developers Conference. Stacy actually lives and works out of Amsterdam, so we are bringing you expertise from even farther afield this month. Hi, Stacy. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me. It's awesome that modern technology allows us to do this, because you're, what, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening?
No, I am actually at 4:41 right now, so...
Okay, so it's not quite super late for you, and I'm at 9:41 in the morning.
But yes, you are my first European guest that we've had this season.
Oh, I feel so honoured.
Yes, and probably actually the only one, because we do like to keep it Australia and Asia based. But yes, I couldn't resist asking you after seeing your talk at ORDEV. We are going to talk today about Azure Static Web Apps, and I had your original book here, which I always forget to bring for you to sign when I see you in person. But now you actually have, is it the second edition that you're bringing out?
I have a second edition. We're just getting the code sorted for that to make sure that the typesetting is correct. Because the reviews I got on the first book, the ones that meant the most to me were the people that wrote, hey, this is a tech book where I can just write in the examples and it works. And I've had a similar experience with technical books. It's really hard to get it so that the code just works, because typesetting is a really complex thing. So we're just spending time right now dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making sure that code just works as we want it to. And then hopefully it's going to be still published this year.
When we were in ORDEV, you were telling this story about how someone had kind of goaded you into that talk. Do you want to tell that story?
That was back in, I think it was 2020. It was in the semi-lockdown period for COVID. So you were allowed to congregate, but it wasn't recommended. And a company here in the Netherlands organized Azure Live, and they got a load of experts from around, I think, the Netherlands and the surrounding countries. They brought them into their offices, which is an old church near Amsterdam. It is a spectacular building.
Nice.
And we had all of the speakers with tests, keeping a little bit apart from each other. But obviously it was online. We had no audience, so to speak. About an hour before I got up to talk about authentication and Azure Static Web Apps, a fellow speaker who I won't name, and I can't name because I've forgotten who it is, asked me what I was talking about. And I said, yeah, I'm doing authentication for Azure Static Web Apps. That's my that's my focus at the moment. I really enjoy them. I was like, oh, I suppose it's fun for a hobby and a toy, but you can't really do anything serious with them, can you? I was like, don't say this to someone an hour before they're going out to do the talk, that what they're talking about is worthless. But it also really makes I'm going to prove you wrong. I have experience throughout my life of people telling me what I can't do. And the great thing is that generally, if somebody else says I can't do something, I'm going to prove them wrong. So I immediately the next talk I write about static web apps is going to be how you can use it in a production environment. We're going to go beyond the getting started, the Azure portal, and what can we do? So we have resilience, we have the different backends you can put into it. It's I'm going to do the infrastructure as code, because what you get out of the box from Azure Static Web Apps is spectacular for a hobby site. But it is kind of a black box. You put stuff in, you get something out, but what happens in the middle, you don't really have that much control over. It's like, fine, so we're going to write an infrastructure as code pipeline. I'm going to write my own build and deploy pipeline that also lets you redeploy old code so that when you break production, because we all break production at some point or other, we can do a quick rollback to a previously known working version. And after we've done all of that, if there's time, we're going to also set the custom domains, because if you have all of this working as a pipeline, that gives you a very enterprise-ready static web app that can do a lot for you without too much effort still. It's still a simple to control system, and it's still cheap. It's like 10 euros, I believe, these days for a standard tier, which if you're doing it for a production workload, take the standard tier, don't take the free tier.
Yes.
So yeah, so that, like, somebody just telling me that what I was doing was pointless, that is what led me to doing that talk. And after writing the first book, I was really happy with what I put in there. But it's still, you get to the end, it's like, right, you know most of the stuff. I've told you an amount of stuff to do for semi-production. But you're still going to get to the end. It's like, how do we take this to the next step now? How do we actually use this in a production environment? And I didn't want to leave it at that point. So I included this chapter at the end. It is a complex chapter. And my reviewers told me this. It's like, you go from hand-holding, 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 hand-holding. Wow. But the code is available. I'm going to be talking through it with you. I'm going to be making a video on YouTube for this so that when people get to that last chapter, they can follow along, and hopefully that's going to make it a little bit easier. But I really wanted it in the book to help people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really liked how the book starts, like absolutely from the beginning. Like this is how you set up your repo. You know, it's really like right at the start, and then takes people through step by step. But I don't think it's too much of a jump at the end to then say, now let's enterprise ready this app. Now let's, and I think I'm not as scared as I would have been in the past, because you can just ask GitHub Copilot to explain things to you that you don't understand.
Yeah, that is very true. GitHub is great for that type of stuff. So you can get the code from the repo, and you can ask GitHub to also explain the code. Yeah. So if there's something that you don't follow along with quite right from the book, hopefully GitHub can help you with that as well. It's I actually find that a really interesting use case of AI. It's I have seen other authors in different domains saying that they use AI to write their books now because they get it to interview them and create an interview, and that's what they use for the book. Personally, I disagree with that, because my book is me, and it's my personality that's coming through. Yeah. What I do is, after I've finished a chapter, I throw that chapter into a chat without any other context and say, what is this about? And if I get a response from the AI telling me what I want to get across, then I know I'm probably on the right track. And if I get an answer completely different to what I think I'm saying, then I know that I need to do some extra work. Yeah. So hopefully, if you do throw stuff from the book into AI to get extra explanation, that has already been done once. So you should get a decent response from it.
Yeah, but I think I really like the way it explains repos. I like the way it. Like, I have had a conversation with it about how can I take my Azure Static Web App to, well, I didn't say, well, actually I did say, I said enterprise grade, trustworthy AI. And I like that it explained each of the concepts as it went through. So it was like, you could do this, and these things would bring it to this level. That might not yet be production grade. But then if you added these things in, then and it's talking about the authentication, the security, it's talking about all sorts of different things that you need to do to level it up, but it explains them all to me. And I think, that's a really good way to learn stuff. It's like, take take a book to start and then
Yep.
start working through the repo. And then where you get stuck, ask GitHub Copilot to explain it
Yeah.
to you.
That. It can be so useful doing that kind of stuff.
Yes. Anyway, this sounds great. So why don't you, why don't you take it away and show us what you wanna show?
Yeah, so it's I've got kind of a list that I set up of the stuff that I want to talk through. Some of it is a pre-set up demo, so hopefully I can show it nicely. And some of it is I'm going to be doing it on the fly, so you're going to see the issues that I run into along the way as well, which is always fun. So this is one that we're going to come into later, but what I want to do first, as you said in the book, I show you just really how to get started. And although I have the repo already set up, I want to just put a first static web app out there because I always love to show just how quickly you can get going. So we're going to come, and I already have the repo on my machine, and that is getting started. And this is a bit, I'm going to have to close this one in a second because I tried to set this up and it didn't work, but I want to go through the solution to the problem. Okay, so we have an error message here. Solution getting started already exists in this location. Now, this is an issue for Rider, and because I'm on a Mac, I'm using Rider. Visual Studio copes way better with this. But the way that we can get around this, and another superb tool for development, is what we can do here is go to the right directory. We have this getting started. And in here, we can use the .NET command line to help us. And I've actually started to use this more and more because it is quicker than doing it through the tools. The only thing is you have to always remember the syntax. So we have .NET new solution. And also typing when somebody's watching you is not the easiest. Getting started. /name. So now we have this solution here. We can now just go rider star.sln. And hopefully Rider's going to open in a second. We're going to trust and open that. New window. And this is how we can get around that issue of it being in the same place. So if you're ever having issues with your tools, seriously, .NET command line, superb. Now we have this, we can actually start to do real stuff. So what we're going to do here is just create a new, where do we want? I want to add a new project. We're going to create a new web application. So this is going to be client. I'm using .NET 9 because in my testing so far, static web apps haven't been upgraded to .NET 10, which is kind of annoying, but hopefully they will be soon. It generally takes a couple of weeks to come through. We're going to create that Blazor WebAssembly standalone app because it's a static application. You need those static files. And then we're going to add Azure Functions. And this one is going to be called API. And all we're going to do is join these things together and deploy them just to go through the flow of creating it. So if we start this, if we make sure that this is set up correctly, when we run this, for anybody who's ever used static web apps in the past, this is the scaffolded application. So we have a hello world, we have a counter, and we have a weather.json showing that you can do stuff. If we have a look at our network traffic, and we want the all fetches, if we restart this, you will see that we're calling a weather.json. So it's literally just JSON data that's included with the web API, the Blazor standalone app to show how you get data from the backend. That's obviously not what we want to do because we want an application that gets real data. So we can add an API here we can add a new function trigger, and that's going to be HTTP. And we're just going to call that weather functions. In our weather data, we have a line here which just says, get the weather forecast from this weather.json. Which, like I say, we don't want. We want this weather forecast. So I want to bring this across. We're going to copy it because we don't care too much about dry and wet right now. Let's add that weather forecast. And I've deleted too much, haven't I? Because I selected stuff. So we have our weather forecast here, and then what we're going to do is just say bath forecast equal new list weather forecast. And I was kind of hoping that AI was going to come to my rescue there and just do it for me, because this is just boilerplate. Write code to just return 5 forecasts with random data. This is cool. Vibe coding, when you're in a talk, is it actually going to do something useful or not? You know what? That works. So we now just have this list of weather forecasts that we're sending back that we can use on the other side. So here we have our trigger. And just to make it easy, I want to put a root
I like
in
that
there.
it didn't just like fill in the code for you, but that it corrected the spelling. It was clearly upset about you having the incorrect spelling as the variable, and it resolved that when it put it in.
Spelling is not my thing. Okay, so we have our trigger for weather. So now, if we go back to our weather forecast, rather than going to sample data, we should be able to go to API, and I believe I just called it weather, didn't I? I have no idea if I spelled it right here, so I'm going to copy paste it. Because, you know, then at least if it's wrong everywhere. We're going to commit this. We're going to push it up to our repo. So we want the unversioned files, and we want the changed file, and we're going to add a decent commit message. We're going to push that up to main, so push. And
So
then
I didn't even write my own commit messages anymore. I let Copilot write them for me as well.
Yeah. I'm getting very lazy.
But I think I've always been lazy. But now I'm getting better commit messages and better PR requests because it does it for me.
I don't do the same thing at all, honestly. I also use in GitHub. If you have the GitHub the Copilot agent, you can get it to review your code, and it does pick up your spelling mistakes. It does write a very nice comment about what this does. And even on my personal projects, I now make sure that I always get a GitHub Copilot review just to see if there's anything I've missed. And certainly when I'm doing HTML and CSS, I don't know how to do HTML and CSS. That's not my thing. But it can give you such great advice on, hey, you know that you can do this simpler and improve what you're doing. It doesn't always get it right, as I think that when you're using AI, the secret to using it well is always being responsible for your code. Do not just accept anything that AI gives you. Always look at it and make sure that it's what you want.
Yeah. Well,
But here we
had a really good story for that the other day. I saw a guy at PyCon Australia, and he was a senior dev, and he said, he was going through doing his code quicker because it was just filling it all in for him, and it reached a point where it had written a function completely differently to how he wanted it, and he said, no, that's not what I want. I want this, and it said, no, I'm sorry, I can't let you do that because the way you want to write that is legacy code, and it introduces a security flaw into your app.
wow.
And these are the dependencies, these are the things that have changed, this is the reasoning, and this is why it needs to be written like this. And he said he was just blown away because he didn't think he had anything to learn.
Yep. So yeah, it can be spectacular. So we have our API, we have our client, and hopefully I've done this right because most of the time I do this using snippets, but today I'm being a little bit more risky. What we're going to do, I believe I have a resource group that I can use for this. Do I have a test? SWA portal, that will do. So what I'm going to do is create a new static web app inside of a resource group. So static web app. And this is the wonderful, if you're doing a hobby, if you are just starting out, that you can make something quickly and easily and see how to iterate. So we have these deployment details. You can do this with Azure DevOps. You can do this with GitHub. Other sources are fine, but then you do have to write your own thing. In my Stacy Cache, I can go to my Stacy Cache Talks repository and my Getting Started repo, my main branch. And here it says, hey, you're writing Blazor, which is kind of cool because it already knows what I'm trying to deploy. It guesses where my app and my API location are, so client and API, so that should be what we need. And it will make me a workflow file. So I should be able to create this. Static web apps generally get deployed really quickly, so you can get started nice and quick. Here's my application. The name doesn't have to be unique. I know that Microsoft's starting to spread that to other resources now, which is nice. You don't have to have a globally unique resource name, which can make your naming convention make more sense to you. Unfortunately, it does give you this type of URL, blacksand 0599D7003.3.azurestaticapps.net, which no one's ever going to remember. So we're going to change that in a second. And if we come here, then we just have this staticwebapps.net is available, but you're not doing anything yet. And that not doing anything yet is, of course, because we need to deploy our code. You can see that I now have a GitHub workflow. And if we go to the actions, we're actually deploying our code. So while this is running, let's have a look at what that code actually does. We have a CI/CD pipeline. Anytime we push something to our main branch, this gets deployed. So as soon as you change main, you go to production. So always test your code. And when you make a pull request, which is open, synchronized, reopened, or closed, it also runs this workflow. On a push to main or on a pull request which is not being closed, we check out our code and we have this GitHub action. Azure Static Web Apps deploy v1. What this will do is pass your GitHub token through to your Azure Static Web App, to the action. It will figure out what you are building at the time. So at the beginning, it said you're building Blazor, But if I was to change this to Angular, as long as my app location and API location are the same, it will still build and deploy. So it figures that out, it builds it. It also figures out what Azure functions you're using, which I think is super cool. I use .NET isolated. And so it creates in your static web app a .NET 9 isolated Azure function resource, which is invisible to the outside world, but is available for your static web app. If you are using any kind of JavaScript-based backend server, it will do that as well. I believe it does Python. So it just creates that for you without you having to do anything. So for getting started, it absolutely takes the effort out of doing this. If you're on a pull request, and I think this is where it gets really cool, if you're on a pull request, it will also make you a new environment so that you have somewhere you can test it before you merge into your main branch and push to production. So you can always make sure that it's looking right in production on Azure before you go to production. And then we have this second job. When you close a pull request, it removes that environment for you. And it still uses the same magic Azure task. It just has a different action which does a different thing. So this is what I was saying. It is awesome out of the box, but when you are using this in a more professional environment, maybe you want more control than this.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to in a second. Have we deployed yet? Did it work? Okay, so we've deployed now. So if I go back to my, not that one, Black Sand, and restart this, here's our application, still running, and hopefully, if we run the weather, we now get our weather data, but we can check the call, and that now isn't coming from, let's make this visible. It's not coming from that JSON anymore. It's coming from that API that we just wrote. So I think this is so powerful that just in a few minutes, whilst talking, we have an app deployed with communication backwards and forwards. That API is specific to this static web app. It's awesome. There is an issue, and I'm going to show this issue now by running it locally. If we run our client, and if we run our API, come back in here and go to the weather, you can see that we now have an error. And that error is because this is coming from 5186, which is this port here. And obviously, our API is an Azure function. It's not coming from the same place. When this was in preview, you had to write a whole load of code so that if you were running locally, you had one base URL. If you're running production, you had a different URL. We can fix this much easier now by using something called the Static Web Apps CLA. So if we go back to Rider and we come into our terminal, we have something called SWA. Now, you install this using npm, and it started out as basically a fake Azure Static Web App to debug your applications, but it morphed very quickly, even before it went into GA, to helping you do so much more. So you can manage your application from this command line too. For now, we don't particularly want to do that. What we want to do is get this URL, and we want to say SWA start that and API port. API port needs to be 7023. Is it API port or is it API dashport? Interesting. We'll find out. So we have our local host. If we open this and we come to weather. Okay, we're now getting a 500, which is better. So it is calling the right place. Why are we getting a 500? What have I done wrong here?
You could ask Copilot.
I could ask Copilot, bad gateway. That means it doesn't think it's running, but it is running.
I'd say it's probably because it's a live demo and inevitably stuff has to go wrong.
Oh, because it didn't pick it up. It's still going to 7071. So let's stop this. API dash port 7023, was it? Nope. Dash API port
7071 is the one of them, and the other one is 40 something. 42.
There we go. So we have weather coming back here. So now if I restart my app and I have if I've remembered the command line for the static web app, we can see that this is now acting like it does in production. We can go directly to the API from our machine. And this is your development in a loop. So that's
perfect.
To get started. I think that this is such a nice, quick thing to do. The next thing that I want to talk about that I think is really useful is authentication. Because out of the box, you get authentication built in. And nobody likes dealing with authentication. And when you roll your own, you can really easily get problems because you introduce stuff. We solve this. Let's go to our production one first.
I definitely always get stuck on authentication. I really find anything security is a nightmare for me, which is crazy because my best friend is a security guy, and so he's always judging me.
Yeah, I get that feeling. But inside of the static web app, we have a root called .auth. And that gives us access to a version of the Easy Auth from Azure that is really well integrated into Azure Static Web Apps. So if we go to the .auth/me root, we get this client principal out. And this is somebody who is logged in. Now, obviously, we're not logged in right now. So if we log in, login / and you can do this either using Entra with Azure Active Directory or GitHub. That will now send me to GitHub, make me authorize static web apps. I obviously have to grant consent because I'm using stuff from a GitHub account. Now I'm back inside of my application. We've got no code here to work with this, but if I now go back to that auth.me, I have all of this information from GitHub to help me log in. So I don't have to care about any of that authentication stuff. I can just use this directly out of the box. And that is also so cool that you have this available.
That's very, very easy. That is lovely.
Just a little bit. It's there are a few things that you need to be aware of for this. One is this user ID isn't actually doxing me because this user ID is generated anytime I connect to a new Azure Static Web App. So it automatically creates a user inside of my static web app, gives them a user ID, and anytime they log back in, this user ID will be used. The downside is it is specific to this static web app. So if you are using this and you're using the user ID to do anything other than figure out what this person can do, if you have to recreate your application, you're going to end up with orphan records, because when the people log in again, they're going to have to grant consent again, and they're going to have a new user ID. You can get around this with custom auth that we're not going to get to today, because I have other cool stuff that I want to show, but you can use custom auth to get around this. The other one that we have is these anonymous user roles. Or these user roles. Out of the box, everybody is anonymous. Authenticated just shows that you have logged in, so we know who you are. And you can use that to protect your APIs. You can use that inside of your code in order to protect roots. And you can add new ones inside of the portal. Where are the roles? Role management. In here, you can invite new users. So Stacy Cash, I believe, is my GitHub. I always forget my handle. Okay, it is. Sometimes it's with a dash, sometimes it's without. Yeah. I can give me here Stacy herself. I can generate an invite link. The problem here is, even if I log out here, and you can see again, all of that's built in. I'm now logged out. If I go back to the /auth/me, we'll see empty again. It is, however, cached. So I'm logged in again. In theory, I should now have that extra role. And just to prove me wrong, it's not going to cache it this time. It used to be that you had to wait about 20 minutes for that to be updated. But now you can see that we have the user role, Stacy herself. So it's just really easy to add that kind of information too. The last thing that I want to say for the authentication and authorization, if you're working in .NET or in Blazor, in any other language, but specifically for these two, there is an amount of boilerplate that you have to write yourself. And you need to do this every time. And if I can just do a little bit of shameless self-promotion, if I go to Nugget and I sign in with my personal account, I have made packages to do this. So there are Nugget packages available to get the client principal on the API side and to do the whole authentication state manager that you need inside of Blazor in order to access this authentication inside of your code. So once you install, once you install this, there's actually nothing that you need to do aside from actually use the authentication wrappers and context managers inside of Blazor, and in API you just simply say get me the token or the client principal, and then you can just read it directly from there. It makes it so much simpler. I wrote that because I got fed up of writing the boilerplate all the time. So I made it for me, but if it can help somebody else, awesome.
So we have a GitHub log where we put all the resources for this episode, and obviously we're going to put the links to the repos that you want to share and all of that, but everything else like that as well we'll put in there, shall we?
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the last thing I want to show in this really quick demo before I show some of the deeper stuff that you can do with it is custom domains. Because Blacksand 0599D7003.3.azurestaticapps.net doesn't really roll off the tongue and doesn't really stick in your mind, maybe you want to add a different URL for this. In the free tier, you can add 2 custom domains, which at first sounds really odd. Why do you need 2 for a free tier? And it's because if you want to use your Apex domain and www, you need 2 custom domains set up inside of your application. So I'm not going to do the Apex domain just because that takes an age to work on the back end for the DNS. There's a lot of checks that have to go on there, but it's not difficult to do. It just takes time. If you're using Azure DNS, I may have an Azure DNS zone set up. Yeah, so I have stacyclouds.com. And what we can do here is say podcast. I can add this custom domain. Because I'm using an Azure DNS zone, it will do everything for me. I don't need to think about what I'm doing. That should come across in just a few minutes and should be available for us. If I close this, will you continue adding? Yes. So if we refresh that now, we can see that it's retrieving the tokens and doing other stuff. If you want to do something from a different provider, I have on a different screen. I'm not going to show this because that would be doxing myself. But I have a different domain called, where's my DNS record? stacyclouds.dev. And what I want to do is add podcast.stacyclouds.dev. When you try and do this, we get this CNAME record that we have to set. And actually, that is what's happening inside of the Azure DNS as well. It's just that it does it for you, so you don't have to look. But what we're going to have to do instead is set inside of our domain provider. I say I'm doing that on another screen not to dox myself, but also every domain provider has their own way of doing this. So seeing what I'm doing doesn't really say that much. Mm-hmm. We want a CNAME record. We can add that. It really helps if you look what you're doing, Stacy. Copy paste whilst talking early on a Friday morning. Always interesting. So I have now added that. If I then click add here, it's going to do the same thing that it did before. It's going to try and add that domain. And if we refresh this now, we should have another one. Has this one spun up yet? Okay, it's not private. That's because it's not finished setting up as it should do. However, you can see that we can get to our custom domain really quickly. And hopefully, this one should do the same thing. DNS records are always tricky. You don't know when they're going to come through.
Yeah. Whenever there's a global outage, everyone always says it's DNS.
Yes, it's always DNS. But you can see we've actually got to the right place now, but because it's not set up right, it doesn't go through to the application yet. So we have privacy error issues, but you get the idea. That's how simple it is to set up the custom domains. If we go back to our code, no, I showed the static web app, as well as a static web app for the command line tools. There's also an AZ command that will access different parts of the static web app. Something that's a little bit annoying right now is half the things you can do in the SWA CLI, and the other one you have to do with the AZ static web app command. But by using these two things together, that's what we can do to replace that out-of-the-box pipeline with something more interesting. So I have that set up in a different folder. And can we go to... Where is my backtick on this keyboard there? That one, that one. So I have the base for my experiments. And the first thing that we have is our infrastructure as code pipeline. So if you do want to do this, I'm going to run through this just to give you the idea of what we can do. Hopefully, it's enough to show you that you can go and play with it. Here I have my infrastructure as a code pipeline. We need to log in to the Azure command line, and I'm doing this using an application registration. This is the bit that gets quite complex in the book. The fact that you need to set up things like application registrations and that kind of stuff, that anytime you play with Entra ID, that is where your not issues, complexity. That's where your complexity will hit you.
That's where I get confused.
Yes. But actually, to create a static web app from that point, it's not that complex. We do need to make sure that we can install dynamic extensions when we're running this code. So that's what the first line does. The second line is a standard AZ command line to create a resource group. And the third one is deploy my static web app form, or deploy my resource for me to the resource group that I just created using this main bicep file. And this is the simplest possible file that you can use to create a static web app using bicep. You can do a lot more than this, but for a demo purpose, we need to give it a name, a location, and the SKU that we want to run. All of the other properties you can set, but you don't need to when you start exploring and playing to see what you can do with this.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that we need to do, if you have any environment settings, so this example uses a Cosmos database in the back end, you can set environment variables using this static web app command, access the app settings, tell it the name and the resource group, and then tell it all of the setting names that you want to change. So when you need to add a new setting, you just update this, rerun the pipeline, and because Bicep and ARM is a end result focused process, it will just make the changes that you need. It won't do any recreation of your app or anything like that. To deploy the applications, it gets slightly more complex because we have to rebuild that entire workflow that we just saw as one simple action. So we have the same ways to kick it off. We can do a push to the main branch and a pull request, which is open, synchronized, reopen, and closed. We do need a special permission if I don't break my code. Pull request write. This was a change in GitHub, and actually the Microsoft out of the box pipeline is broken right now because they haven't updated the pipeline that they create yet. GitHub changed it so that out of the box you cannot write to pull requests when you are in a pipeline. So you have to explicitly say, I want it to have this permission. Then we have our build and test, exactly the same as we had before. We do this on a push to our main branch or a pull request that isn't being closed. We need to set up the version of .NET that we use. We need to build and publish both our client and our API. Because we are, how do we say that? Well-behaved developers, we have tests, so we can run our tests here. And then we can upload everything to a GitHub artifact. This is no more or no less than you would have in any other build pipeline. This isn't special for Azure Static Web Apps. The only one that you really need is this include hidden files. I spent about 3 weeks pulling my hair out trying to find this or find the solution to this problem. Every time I ran this, if I included everything in one job, it worked. If I split it into two, it didn't, and I could not figure out why. It turns out that when you build the API, it puts an amount of things in hidden folders, and if you don't have those hidden folders, it will not create your Azure function for you correctly, but it also doesn't give you errors telling you that things are missing. It just quietly fails for you. So, hey, the deploy worked, and when you go and try and run it, you get a 404 error. Then we're going to do a deploy. This is a separate job, and I do this as a separate job so that when I break production, I can roll back one level. We download our artifacts, and this is where the magic starts to happen with the command lines and static web apps. We log into Azure. Then we need to get that deployment token. In the standard out-of-the-box flow, the portal will create a deploy token for you. So you don't even realize that this is how it accesses production, because it tries to hide that from you because it's a getting started flow. Here we have no idea what the resource is aside from the name that we give it. So we have to fetch that token. We can use that again using the static web app, and we can get it to list the secrets. Make sure that you write your command line so that you are not outputting this information to your logs. Otherwise, your logs will expose all of your secrets, and that's very naughty. For the same reason, we add a mask to the secret, which means that anytime it comes to the log, again, it's masked. You just get star, 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 as opposing to dox yourself. Super important to remember. Then we need to set our environment, because our original workflow would create our staging environments, and we want the same functionality, we just want control over it. And we can do that just by knowing, are we on a push? And if we are, we push to the environment of production. And if we're not, we can just make up an environment name, but it needs to be repeatable across pushes to a pull request. So staging, and then the event number, which is your pull request number, always goes to this environment. Then we need to install Node, because we have to install that static web apps CLI. This is a bit that I hope changes in the future. I would either rather do everything via Node or everything via the AZ command line, having to go between the two. It is a little bit annoying. Then we do the deploy. And for that one, we need that secret that we just fetched. We use the SWA deploy. We make a deploy config inside of our static web apps CLI configuration. I'm going to show that very quickly in a second, but just know that you need to set it up. Tell it the environment it's running to, the app name and the resource group it's running to, and where it can find the configuration that it needs to find this deploy config. And that will either create your static staging environment and push it, or push to your production environment. Then we need to get the host name we've just pushed to, because again, we don't know what host name we have. And we can do that again using this static web app environment list. The resource, how do we say that? The environment will always contain the string that you use to create the environment. So staging X will always be in that environment host name. So we can use that to extract it. And then we can write to our pull request saying, hey, a staging environment has been updated. Here is where you can test it. It was pushed by this person. So that when you make a pull request, you get a message in your pull request telling you that your deploy was good and you can test it here. Finally, because we need to clean up as well, we have this close job. And again, that needs to use the AZ static web app to deploy. you need the SWA CLI to clean up. You need the AZ Static Web App. Again, I hope this changes in the future. But you can see that you have the full control here. And I think showing the amount of things that we can do really helps dispel the myth that this is just a toy for hobby sites. You really can use this as you want to use it. I do also have the custom domain. But as you probably saw in my talk, that is quite a long and extensive pipeline. So I think for time reasons, it's probably best that we just let people know they can go and look at that inside of my repo.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that this is a really nice way that you can get started with a more enterprise version. You can create your resources on the fly. You can do your custom domains on the fly, and you can build and deploy using whatever techniques you want, and then just deploy it using standard code in order to support you. Do we have time for one last demo? I'm not sure how we're doing for time at the moment.
Well, I think you should do it, and then when I'm cutting, I'll see whether I can get it in or not.
Awesome. So this is something that I've just done recently, because static web apps are really good for static content. So you have an application, it can read and write from a database, but whereas a server-side Blazor application has a permanent connection to a server and you can get real on-the-fly updates, static web app can't do that because it is just running in the browser, calling an API. But these days, we want more responsive applications. So we want to be able to do this. You can really quickly set up a Web PubSub interface inside of your static web app and get things to talk to each other. So if we have Ghost, and Ghost is talking to Bucky Barnes, and let's take Deadpool too. I like Deadpool. So everybody is now logged in, and we can now send messages to people. So if I send a message to all, we get coffee, discuss strategies, we get coffee, discuss strategies, and we get coffee, discuss strategies. So we can have that really immediate communication. Now, if I want to send to a particular person, so say I want to send a message to Ghost, I can send that message just to Ghost. You see, it doesn't appear in my messages. It doesn't appear in Bucky's messages, but it does appear in Ghost's messages. And if Ghost wants to talk to the Thunderbolts, she can send silence and static, because communications don't always work. Bucky Barnes gets that silence and static. However, Deadpool doesn't, because he's not in the Thunderbolts. This is set up in such a way that it's just a couple of lines of code.
Really?
Yeah, I was expecting this to be so complex. And once I got it working, it was like, really? Is this it? Our client still talks to our API, but it also talks to a Web PubSub. Obviously, you can't give the secrets to the client because that runs on the client's machine, and don't give your secrets to the client. So what we have instead is a function to connect to the Web PubSub. We have a superhero that is logged in. And then we just say, make me a connection URL for this user and give them this group or multiple groups. You can do roles here as well. And then you return that to the client. On the client side, when you do this, you make a WebSocket. You use the URI that you get from the server. And all you need to do is just set up a deserialization message so that when a message comes from the WebSocket you've opened, you can do something with it. Communicating is just calling our API. That just goes to the Azure functions, send a message to everybody, send a message to a hero, send a message to a group. That is everything you need. In the back end, all we do is we get a message. You can pretty much ignore all of this because this is just getting a message from a list of messages I set up. I wanted to make it a free input, a text box. And then I thought, I'm going to a software developers conference. I'm going to get them to put text on the screen. Do I trust developers to make this conform to the code of conduct? And I decided, I'm a software developer. No, I don't trust software developers not to put something on here that maybe shouldn't be there. So I made my own messages. But the actual code is just this bit here. When we send a message to everybody, then we just have send to all. When we send it to one person, we just have a send to user, and we just need the user ID. And for the group, it's just, if we come down, send to group with the group ID. This is so simple. I was shocked at how easy this was to implement. Because it does mean setting up a Web PubSub resource, which isn't inside of your static web app. But that, again, it's free to set up. Inside of the portal, it's not complex to play with. And I think you get something like 20 concurrent connections and 50,000 messages a month. So try this and play with it. And when you come to do something more realistic, you can use my Nugget package in order to access things. So here I am making sure that I'm authenticated and I'm getting data back from a database. When I want to add data to a database, I am adding a create item async. So I'm creating a book inside of my Cosmos DB. And then I'm just using a Cosmos DB trigger here to pick up all changes in the database. And I am sending Web PubSub notifications based on that. So that either goes to the user or to a group of people. So here I've got it. If you create a book, it tells you you've created a book. If someone borrows your book, it tells you they borrowed your book. If somebody returns a book, it tells everybody that's waiting for your book that your book is available. And again, it's not that much code in order to add this amount of functionality to our application. And again, I just think that's a really easy way to expand an Azure Static Web App so that you can do more things with it. There is one cravat here, and that is when you're dealing with a Cosmos DB update function, functions inside of an Azure Static Web App cannot have anything other than HTTP triggers. That doesn't work. In the standard tier, you can manage your own Azure functions and assign them to an Azure Static Web App. Now, the Static Web App still only has access to that HTTP, but you can have your Cosmos DB functions running inside of there as well. It's just that the Static Web App can't trigger things. They can only do HTTP, but you can do the other fun stuff in the back end. And of course, if you really want to use a free tier, you can also just run a free Azure function as well and run the Cosmos DB updates inside of that one. It's not that much work to build this out and make it really useful. So I actually built this because I'm trying to demetify my life. And I want to get away from Goodreads, and I just want an application that I can manage my own library. Because like yourself, you have an amount of books. Mm-hmm. In the room behind me, we have our library, and I think we're about 50 books away from what I've seen is an official library, which is 1,000 books.
Uh-huh. Well, there's a
And we need
goal.
to wait. It's nice. But when we're buying books, it's always so hard. Do we have this book? Do we not have this book? And where is this book? Because we lend our books out, and I have ADHD.
Mm.
Basically, if I lend a book out, unless you're nice enough to also remember and give it back to me, I've probably given you that book. I've lost tens of books over the years that way because I don't
Same.
know who I've lent them to, and they've not stolen them. They probably just have also forgotten.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to actually keep track of the books and know whether or not I have them or where they are. So this demo is actually the basis that I'm building for that application, which I think will be quite cool.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good idea for people when they want to learn stuff to think about, is there something that they need in their
Yes,
life? And build
absolutely.
that.
It's solve your own problems because that is a great way to get out of the tutorial mindset and into the right, this is how I can use that mindset.
Yeah. I think I have been a lot more satisfied recently when I'll build a basic app. In fact, I start even before a static web app. I normally start with just using Make Docs and GitHub Pages to throw
Yeah,
up a basic web page. And then, so to me, Azure, that's level 0, and then Azure
yeah,
Static Web Apps is level 1. And
yeah,
then from there, as I try to learn how to level it up, make it more enterprise, make it more trustworthy, to
yeah,
learn more about authentication and all the other security concepts that my
yeah.
brain does not want to learn, and learn about proper storage and, add in AI and do all
Yeah,
sorts of
I
stuff.
build it up
If
step by step.
Step by step, yeah, one thing at a time, and thinking about what is useful functionality for, well, your life. It's a
Yeah,
really good way to do it.
absolutely. It's interesting you should say about the GitHub pages. I use GitHub pages for my CV.
Yeah.
Rather than having to have a document lying around somewhere and pulling it out if I ever need it,
Mm,
I now send people a link to my CV and I have it as a subdomain on my
hmm
personal website. So it's always up to date. It is a GitHub repo with Markdown, and I can add things to it. And within like 5 minutes, my updated CV is live online. It's
mm. Well, I obviously use LinkedIn as my CV, but my GitHub profile looks, I mean, it, I showed it to someone the other day and he said, that's not a GitHub profile. That looks like a LinkedIn profile. And he said, it's very beautiful, but, doesn't look very developer-y. And I thought, I'm not going to change it because I think
no,
it's very eye-catching and it has got all the information people will
yep,
need, plus the links to all my repos because it is
yep,
actually GitHub. And it's got more pictures on it and GIFs because with GitHub you can do whatever you want and make it
yeah,
pretty. So
absolutely.
yeah, I absolutely am not in favor of paper printouts, which are
No,
out of date the minute you finish
yeah,
typing them.
absolutely. Especially in the modern world where it's less about what your role is and what you've actually done.
Mm,
Even if you're not changing jobs, you need to make sure that you can keep it updated quickly and simply
mm.
for the new
Y-
cool things that you're doing.
Yeah, and if you don't put them in there, you don't remember. The other
Yeah,
thing this guy said to me, which did really help me, was he said every time you do a conference, every time you do a talk, instead of having a resources page at the end of your conference talk, you should just give them a link to a website that you've created with all the content on for the talk.
yeah,
So in fact, instead of it just being a talk, you're giving them a workshop that they can continue to do at
yeah.
home because it's got all that information and it's got links to any additional resources and learning paths and stuff like that. And,
I
and
really
it
need to do that.
Yes, and it means that you have evidence of your work. You have evidence of all of this
Yeah,
stuff that you're teaching out in the world. And so, yeah, I've been doing that as well recently. And that, I think, it is more that's one of the ways that AI has created more work for me, because it does enable me to do it, and I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't had its help in enabling me to do it a lot quicker. But also, it doesn't take you no time at all to put a website up with all the content in and all of that, even if it is helping you with it. And in all honesty, it has gotten better at even, I ask it to just put template information in for me. So a hero image at the top of each page, and then the text, but I give it the slide titles for each slide, and it has started filling in the content for me now. GitHub Copilot, which used to only want to talk about code, now it knows stuff, not just code. It knows enough to fill in the content. And so, it's a...
I've been busy with the SweetUG website, because I help out with the SweetUG conference now. And we're using GitHub. And we also have a CI/CD pipeline. So everything has to go through pull requests. And anytime I do a pull request, if someone asks me to look at it, if I make one myself, I always click on that Copilot review. Because not only will it tell me the stuff that it thinks I've missed. And it's probably about 80% accurate. Most of the stuff that it says is like, damn, and because it's Copilot, not only does it say, have you considered doing it like this? It tells you the code, and it gives you the commit possibility that GitHub has in its pull requests. So it's just like, yes, 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 no, yes, yes, no. And it gives you a comment in there of this pull request, and it tells you everything that you're doing. So it just gives more information. I don't know if GitHub is quicker for me, but I think it does make me better. Not GitHub, Copilot.
It makes me better because it does insist on explaining everything to me. And as you say, there are plenty of things that I previously would have not thought about, but because it's explaining it to me, I'm reading it and I'm thinking, oh yes, I hadn't thought of that, and now you've said that, I see that this is a good reason to do that. So love it. It's
a lot of fun.
It is a big educating thing. Okay, I have promised everyone we will put all the resources into the GitHub repo for this episode. So you're going to share those with me and I'll put those in. We've been answering questions in chat during the episode, and we will hang around for a little bit afterwards to answer a few more questions online. I want to thank you for joining us today, Stacey.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It has been so much fun, and I think we could probably talk for like 3 episodes in a row and not run out of stuff to talk about.
Possibly,
excited for the new version of the book, excited for the new chapter, and we're going to link as well to your website and things so people can watch out for things like your YouTube videos and anything else you put out that will help them continue this journey.
Awesome. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. And do you have any last tips that you want to share?
I think the only last tip that I want to share with this is, as with a lot of other tech, the fear of getting started is worse than the actual playing with stuff. I suffer from imposter syndrome too when it comes to new technology. It took me an age to do the Web PubSub because I had it in my head that it was so complex. So just get on, try stuff, see what happens, and enjoy yourself.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Excellent advice. And we look forward to reading the book over the Christmas break. Thanks for joining us, and everyone, we will see you all next month.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this digital event. We have specialists on standby to answer your questions for a short while. To ask a question, type it into the chat window now and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. If you're not staying for the Q&A, thank you for attending and we hope to see you again soon.